What's going on YouTube? This is Aciders. Now I'm going to review the pseudo kind of debut album by Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. Basically, this is the debut by Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, the duo. But I think this is like Macklemore's actual second album in terms of what he's done. But the pitch behind it is this album is called The Heist, and it came out in the fall of 2012. So the thing about this particular product is just the fact that this is kind of a signified type album here. Definitely one. This is an album that won the Grammy Award for Best Rap Album of the Year. It actually outbeat Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City, which is an album that continues to be on the Billboard 200 charts even today. You know, way back, so about twice the time that it's been out, since 2012 to about 2024, that album continues to be on the charts. But this is an album that outdid that album back in the day. It's a pretty big deal. Very similar to like Eminem's Recovery from like 2010. This is a particular album that did a lot of damage and like the headway of just having mainstream rap music amongst like the 2010s, kind of having like some commercial commerce and pitches like that. This is a very makeshift type album, but more so than Eminem, this is like an embrace of kind of middle class and just kind of workaday type fare, just with an aspect. I mean, it has a little bit of Hustler's Makeshift in here, and it amalgamates some of that. I can see that it amalgamates some of that particular Hustler's Makeshift just within a more polished type format, and just the kind of the aspect of just kind of saying something that's just not quite as like rugged and pitches like that. But this is kind of the concept. There's some songs on here that particularly kind of have like that relative kind of grittiness, but just in a more kind of just get up and have blue collar, not so much just having the grind of just being more in a hustler's type, it's not being so much like a hustler's kind of rugged type mentality. Songs like Thrift Shop, Wings, some of those type of ones, and there's other songs on here I'm going to list as far as this pitch is going to happen. I just look after the tone, like Victory Lap, some of those type of ones that just kind of depict the tone. In some senses, I've seen the critique of Macklemore where folks kind of feel like he's kind of like a culture vulture, something like that. And I do think the aspect, this is a good album here. I look after the tone. I do think that Macklemore did come up within these conducts of how he particularly saw things. I think a lot of this is authentic. I do see the authenticity about this particular album. Is just kind of the concept that it just feels strange that this kind of aspect just has like the appeal behind it. I think that's just kind of the thing as far as that particular kind of goes, because Eminem as much was not as much doing like thrift shop type songs and kind of, I mean, he just, the thing about Eminem was he was rich from the start. I feel like it just, the thing about Macklemore is he's kind of more in like the grit of like the come up, maybe not so much doing mixtapes like Mac Miller and other white rappers like Yellow Wolf, some of those type of folks that came up more on like the mixtape scene, but just kind of the more hungry type format of just having like a standard job, maybe at like a pizza shop or Best Buy, one of those type places, just standard type fare, and just getting towards it, finding like a producer and just kind of going through the standard grind of like a big city type fare, something like that. Not really sure it's full blown where Macklemore is formed, but it seems more likely on the, yeah, it says Seattle. This was in the fare of like a standard come up just within that particular pitch. But I look after it. This has like big city type fare about it, just would say within the tone. Like I was saying, this is like a signature type album to like the early 2010s. Definitely one that did a lot of damage. This was had a lot of accolades. Now the unfortunate thing about this particular album is I think Macklemore just kind of took more time off than he needed to. The Macklemore and Ryan Lewis duo did at least put out another album in early 2016, but it didn't do nearly as well as this particular one. And Macklemore has kind of been here and there, but I think this might as well be one of his biggest, if not his total biggest album. But definitely, just like Eminem's Recovery, like I was saying, had like 5 singles out this particular one. A lot of these were a big deal. Can't Hold Us hit #1, Thrift Shop hit #1, Same Love was a real big deal around the time, making the message as far as slashing away homophobia, some of those type pitches. There's some other songs on there like Wings and White Walls, some of those type pitches that kind of particularly happen. So it's just some good appeals. Very much a food for thought type album. It's kind of like a wholesome package, not so much just like a party album. This album is actually rather light on like the turn up type songs as far as those pitches kind of happen. This has a more balanced type fare. But I am going to go ahead and give this album like a classic score just within the pitch, that the impact behind it is just very sheer as to how it did it. I feel like the aspect of just kind of getting, I would say within this, like I was saying about the culture vulture stuff, as far as just being able to say that Macklemore is basically like, kind of like, I mean, he talks about basketball on here. It's just within the pitch. I think Macklemore is a pretty solid fan of basketball just within the pitch. It kind of reminds me of just kind of an in the trenches kind of, like if Eminem weren't to have blown up within his relative first album of signing to Dr. Dre, if there would have been some on the grind type come up of like the mid era type days of just putting money in like a shoebox and some of those type pitches and just getting towards it, performing at cheap shows and just kind of living hand to mouth as far as those pitches going to happen within a relative type fare as some of the more in between type days, and just albums that you realize are not going to go gold or platinum, some of those type pitches within those particular tones. I look after this to kind of be the concept, because originally I don't think that this album had the heraldment that it was going to get to the top as far as those pitches going to happen. It was just the surprise. The singles are like at least a couple singles that were released before Thrift Shop, but once Thrift Shop hit in like the fall of 2012 and the winter of 2013, the rest of the singles kind of went into play, and that was kind of how it happened. But Wikipedia says that most of these singles came out before Thrift Shop and then just caught on later, but that's just kind of the pitch. Macklemore was not really known as much in like anything past about the fall of 2012, but once Thrift Shop hit #1, then he started to get his headway. It was just kind of the tone. But yeah, classic album here, multiple singles, definitely like the next one of the definitely one of the signature type ones, and a distinct album that you need to know about from like the early 2010s as far as knowing like the fanfare of it and just pitches like that. So, but yeah, there were 5 singles off this particular album. Recommend all 5 of these. So Wings is the first single. This is like a neighborhood kind of album version of like a mixtape kind of Hustler's Makeshift type song kind of get, just within the tone. Just has a little bit more gloss and Arbord kind of grinding about it, I'd have to say. It's kind of within the tone. It's a concept that the standard tone of like a Hustler's Makeshift that you would catch on a mixtape, just a little bit less starry-eyed, just within the pitch, a little bit more arger, just about as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just a little bit more, you got to get some elbow grease and really get towards it, not just have like the standard kind of just go get fucked up and then get back to it in a few days type pitch as far as those pitches kind of happen. But it's just a good tone, kind of have some of this. It's typical type fare, just talking about the concept of just getting some shoes, some pitches like that, just within the tone, just as far as that particular kind of goes. But I do like the aspect of this one. It's just kind of a more kind of just in between, kind of more on the come up type song to kind of get. I feel like the concept of where Macklemore probably was in late 2010, early 2011 was just the fare behind that sort of pitch. Is that those were the sorts of songs he was kind of making around that time. But it is a hungry type version kind of get. And it's a good concept. It's very Apple single ready. I'd say just mixtape type fare, almost just in a more kind of hungry album, street album type format. Wikipedia lists these singles in like a different type fare. It says that Can't Hold Us and Same Love came out before Thrift Shop. I'm just going to talk about it as to the way the popularity of these singles kind of happened in the United States, as to the way these singles kind of happened. Because basically after Wings, then it was Thrift Shop in the late summer of 2012. Then it was Can't Hold Us after that. Then it was Same Love in like the summer. It was Thrift Shop in the late summer and fall of 2012. Can't Hold Us in the winter of 2013. Same Love in like the summer of 2013. And then White Walls in like the fall of 2013. So I'm just going to talk about it within that. So basically Thrift Shop's the second single. This is a song that hit #1. This is a big deal. I kind of question like the popularity of this song nowadays. I noticed that it does have over 1 billion plays on Spotify. I feel like it does have its relative type fare, but it's just not super common to like the knowledge as to what's kind of going along with some of this type of stuff, just within the pitch of like its continued airplay and pitches like that. I think this is an easy bop to kind of remember. It does have its distinction, but it just seems like it's starting to phase out a bit, as Macklemore is just not as commonly in folks' mind, I'd have to say. It's just kind of the pitch now. 6, 7, 8 years ago, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, pitches like that. I think this is a more highlighted type one. It's a good song. It's definitely one. It's a rap song that hit #1. When you look after some of these type ones that does have distinction, it's just kind of out of the ordinary as far as those pitches can happen. But this is out of the usual kind of club hopper to kind of get here with hell pizzazz and originality. I would definitely say the song slaps hard, but it is basically just like some cream puff fun. So by cream puff, I just mean chicas, that, you know, just the basic concept of just being cream puff type girls, just as wide as the sock type girls or tapioca type girls, just within the pitch as far as being able to say that. Just standard type fare, very much blue collar type step out type night, just within the pitch. I mean, obviously, you know, within the standard fare, just dependent upon what radio stations are going to pick up what rap songs just within the pitch. This is kind of one that is like a #1 song that you can hear on like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Some of those, or you can hear on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when it's not quite the weekend as far as those pitches going to happen, but it is some decent turn up to be able to have for some unwise. So it's a makeshift #1 song, which is just within the pitch as far as being able to say that it has some jazzy type step out, but it's also radio friendly to be able to have for something SFW. So it's just a good pitch, good tone for that. I mean, even Eminem did not always have songs like this. When you think of some of his type songs, this would have been a great song for Eminem to have done. It's kind of interesting that Macklemore was able to outstrip Eminem in this sort of idea. When you think of Eminem's #1s, like Lose Yourself didn't do this, and like Love the Way You Lie didn't do this, and Not Afraid didn't do this. So some of Eminem's first #1s didn't really have that appeal of being like a dance club or nightclub song. So it's just within the pitch behind it. But this is a very signature and distinct kind of early 2010s highlight, I'd have to say. It's a good tone for that. Can't Hold Us was the third single. Now this is another excellent type one. This is another one that hit #1. So Macklemore got 2 #1s just like that. This was a big deal of an album around this particular time. It's because of songs like this that just had the particular fare of him being able to say that this album was a big deal. This song is like a white collar kind of jazzy night step out to kind of get here. Definitely some great catchy kind of John Legend like chorus. Real think that Ray Dalton dude, the cat that did this particular chorus, don't know whatever happened to him, but this is an excellent type fare to get some of this type fare. Just really felt like John Legend particularly did this one as far as those pitches kind of happen. This is like some classic mingle songs, like some classic mingle to kind of get here. I'd have to say just within a tone. So it's an excellent type fare for that one. It's real standard type one, a little bit more calmed down, a little bit more glossed out compared to Thrift Shop. Thrift Shop was a little bit more of one to cut loose, get some drinks in your system, but Can't Hold Us is just a little bit more organized of one. Still another SFW one to kind of get, but just has a little bit more fare. Maybe some drink sloshing within that relative type pitch, but just kind of a little bit more composed and suited up, I'd have to say. But there are plenty of songs like that on here. Some other ones like that would be 10,000 Hours, and like other ones like, well, kind of within a relative sense, I would say Jimmy Iovine, but that one's a more cut loose type one. But there are some this more sobering type moments within that tone. But I think there's at least maybe one other one like Can't Hold Us and 10,000 Hours, but it's just within the pitch. But Same Love is a nice one. Fourth single here. This is like an eye-opening kind of tabloids and press making single to kind of get. This is probably the most SFW of the songs on here in terms of something that's just more standard banter and pitches like that, just everyday kind of commerce and just gab as far as those pitches kind of happen. This is like a great blue collar everyday. It's like a great kind of blue collar everyday type activity, and just some good outs to kind of have within that standard fare. So it's just some standard summer drear, just within the pitch of having like some SFW-ness to kind of get. So this is 3 for 3 with Macklemore being able to knock out some of these type ones as far as the pitch of just having something commercial and just able to do. A lot of these were pretty trendy for the early 2010s, I would say. This is very much like a shape-shifting type project, just like Eminem's Recovery, like I was saying, that just nailed a lot of these. This is a song that didn't hit #1, but I want to say it was like at least a top 12 single as far as those pitches can happen. It's definitely a big deal. This is one of the ones that kind of caught some headway around the time, just because of like this around the time when the Grammys and like the VMAs were kind of happening. It was kind of like, oh, this is, Macklemore was aiming for like, doing the right thing and songs with a message as far as those pitches going to happen. Good fare for that. This basically goes against homophobia and some of those type pitches, which I will say this was kind of a signature. This was a signature song here. This is another one that was kind of a big deal. Macklemore definitely had some shape-shifting type times as far as those pitches going to happen. Thrift Shop kind of did that with saying you don't have to be rich. Can't Hold Us kind of had some white collar type gloss. Apart from like Blurred Lines, there weren't too many songs terribly super doing that apart from Robin Thicke and Jay-Z, some of those type folks. And Same Love was just kind of turning back the tides as far as the homophobia more in rap music, and just pitches like that, or just the concept of just saying that this is just a little bit something more with the message, saying that maybe this is not alright anymore as far as those pitches kind of happen within that tone. It's good to kind of have songs like this. And then White Walls was the 5th single. Now this is one that apparently this song, I don't remember this song hearing this as oftenly on the radio, but I do want to say that apparently this song hit like number 15 on like the Billboard charts as far as those pitches kind of happen. So it's like a woozy kind of summer haze fun, I'd have to say about this one. It reminds me of like a bleary kind of Mac Miller kind of day activity, I'd have to say about this. Just some good frolic and just routine kind of times to kind of have within that fare. So it's just a good pitch. Really like the hook on this particular one. Surprisingly has Schoolboy Q on here and some pitches like that. Just a good tone. It's interesting that both Ab Soul and Schoolboy Q are on this particular project, despite the fact that Kendrick Lamar. It's interesting Macklemore's ties to Kendrick Lamar's crew. It's kind of ironic that particularly happened, but this is the album that got the Grammy over the Kendrick one as far as those pitches can happen. But it's a good appeal. I think they're tight, so it's a good type pitch to be able to get some of this just within the fare behind it. But yeah, White Wall is just a nice one. This really reminds me of like Big Sean, Wiz Khalifa, Mac Miller, some of those type folks that kind of had those more city hop, just kind of Dave Malays type ones. So standard fare behind it. So yeah, this album, I'm going to burn through these pretty quickly because they were starting to reach like a beefy review here. But there's 18 songs on this particular album. I'm reviewing the deluxe edition, and minus like the song Bomb Bomb, which is just kind of an awkward kind of instrumental. Didn't recommend that one. I would say out of 17 songs, I wound up recommending 14. So this album's going to get a 10 out of 10. The only 3 songs I don't recommend on here would just be Cowboy Boots, My Oh My, and then Neon Cathedral. So talk about those. All of those are ones that just kind of have more sobering, kind of personable type fares. This is a very personal and just kind of eye-opening type album just within the pitch. It's just kind of a project that has a lot of these moments of just reflecting on things. Kind of, I do feel like within the aspect of kind of paying attention to like sobriety and pitches like that. It's not just sobering in terms of like real talk, but it's also sobering in terms of beating drug addictions and some of that type fare. Just saying, hey, got to get straight laced, got to clean up my act, some of those type fares, and just not. I mean, there are songs like Jimmy Iovine and Thrift Shop on here, but they're really in like a smaller abundance as far as those pitches gonna happen. But some of these type moments, I kind of felt like Cowboy Boots was just an awkward type one. Didn't really have as much connection or just real spark as far as that pitch kind of went. Was just kind of one of the more dud ones on here. My Oh My was just kind of one of those same type ones like 10,000 Hours and just some of those type songs, like a worse version of 10,000 Hours and Make the Money just didn't have the same appeal. And then Neon Cathedral is just a real kind of repent type song and just rumination, just kind of the aspect of just having good times and just kind of having the aspect behind it, but I just didn't have as much affability for that one. This album still gets a 10 out of 10, so I'm just going to go in on several of these just to pitch. That, like, Jimmy Iovine is one of the best songs on here, I'd have to say. Jimmy Iovine is one of the best songs on here, I'd have to say. It's like a jazzy kind of early 2010s stunt noise kind of get, I would definitely say. Just a good nightclub blitzer to kind of have, get crunk, dance, turnout, definitely kind of having this is definitely some great go ham type music kind of get. So it's just within the tone. Need to be way more songs like this, but I understand the concept of Macklemore and Ryan Lewis just trying to put out a more balanced type project just within tone. I'm glad that there's at least a few of these, but apart from Jimmy Iovine, Can't Hold Us, and Thrift Shop, for the most part, this is more kind of compatible with just standard living. It's just kind of a makeshift kind of workaday type fare, just in a relative kind of urban type sense just within the tone, but it does that. This just has a little bit more edge than Eminem's Recovery, where Eminem was just a little bit more glossed out. I mean, with him, he was trying to cope with losing proof and some of those type pitches, and just kind of the concept of just switching to like a more sobriety type aspect. I mean, this album kind of has that sobriety aspect about it as well, but it just kind of has a little bit more blue collar, as if like actually, like at least with Eminem's Fair, there weren't as many songs for saying, all right, it's time to go get a job at Best Buy or Staples, some of those type pitches, as far as those kind of things kind of happen. But this particular album has a little bit more of getting the W-2 taken care of and getting towards it and get some bills paid, some of that type fare, just more work a day and just kind of standard everyday, I'd have to say. But I look after some good tones. So Victory Lap is a nice one. I do like this appeal. I do feel like definitely the deluxe edition is worth tracking down just within the pitch. At least 2 out of 3 of the songs on there I recommend. Castle and Victory Lap are some excellent ones. So Victory Lap is like a slummish kind of after task, some wine to kind of get here. This goes great with Wings, I'd have to say. Just some good makeshift commute, I would definitely feel like. And this is hooky. Pretty hooky, I'd have to say. There's a lot of great hooks on this particular album. Definitely, if you like songs like Can't Hold Us and Thrift Shop, some of those type ones, there's plenty of these on here. Jimmy Iovine, Victory Lap definitely does that, and this song Enamours pretty well, I'd have to say. Just a good excitement type one. There are some other ones on here. I'm trying to think of some ones like Same Love has some pretty excellent hook. And like White Walls definitely does, and there's probably like another one like that, like I want to say like Starting Over does. So there's just some good pitches for that. But speaking of Starting Over, there's like a stock kind of sobering and stretching kind of evening malaise kind of get here, just a blue collar kind of rumination, I would definitely feel like, and this is like some real talk kind of unwind. So it's just within the pitch of having some of that fare. It's kind of relative lengthy day, just within the fare behind it, just some of those type ones that just kind of where it's not where you're gonna go hit up a bar or something like that, go hit up a dance club, strip club, something like that, but just kind of within the tone of just saying, got some stuff to take care of, got to be laced today, got to be straight laced today as far as those pitches kind of happen, but just getting towards it. So I'd say another song that kind of has some of that type fare would be 10,000 Hours. It's a pretty good kickoff to this particular album. It's like a glossy kind of evening step out, I'd have to say, very sobering and emphasized type day to kind of have in particular. Just kind of goes through the motions as far as those pitches kind of happen, just amongst like a real emphatic type night, and this is like a groomed kind of makeshift night to kind of get here. So it's just within the tone. This would probably be a good 1-2 punch to kind of have in the same fashion with Can't Hold Us. Just those same sorts of pitches, just a little bit more of white collar type fare, I'd have to say. Good type tone for that. In Line is a quality one. That's like a dreary kind of day hop type song kind of get. Pretty similar to Same Love, I'd have to say, without the message attached to it, I'd have to suppose about that one. And this also goes well with White Walls, I'd have to say, just some good day slack kind of get. So it's just within the tone. I do like some of these dreary kind of Mac Miller-esque type songs kind of get within that pitch. Just some good type fare just for some smokage. I almost feel like Macklemore almost gives me like some hippie type vibes within a relative sense. I almost feel like Macklemore gives me some hippie type vibes within a relative type sense. I think he's probably tripped within those particular type fares. It's good fare to kind of get that. It's not commonly displayed, but it's just within the tone. You get some of that type, just woozy kind of lackadaisical kind of like like Woodstock type day, something that just tie-dye shirt kind of day as far as those pitches kind of happen just within that fair. But there are some songs like that, like White Walls and Thin Line, some of those type pitches, and even Same Love kind of have some of that just kind of free bass, kind of one love type pitch as far as those pitches kind of go along with it. Some good type fare. So they make the money as a quality ones, like a woke and sobering kind of evening traffic malaise to kind of get within that tone. Just a work a day, kind of long work day type tune to kind of get within that pitch, and this is like some routine kind of outs to kind of have. Make the money is just some typical kind of evening slag, just food for thought as far as those pitches kind of happen with like the standard day fare and just the commerce of this typical blue collar typeness to kind of get within that standard fare. Yeah, make the money is just some typical kind of evening slag as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just unwind a bit just within the tone, just food for thought as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just kind of just standard kind of errand running pitches like that, just kind of typical car commerce, some of that type fare, workaday fun. I look after some of these type ones. I mean, they're good type fare to kind of get just within the tone because this was more relatively new. This is kind of somewhat before NF, and this particular album, The Heist, is kind of before NF, and some of those type folks were really getting into the headway of delivering like these blue collar kind of workaday type ones. But I definitely feel like the foundation was probably laid with Eminem's Recovery, but this is definitely an album that helped the door in that particular style pretty quickly. It just did a lot of these things as far as shape-shifting the more blue-collar rap type fare like the early 2010s. This is definitely one that had the trend tracks. Like Macklemore figured it out pretty quickly. It's just within the tone of being able to get a lot of these. A lot of these are just great companions for like standard day slag. Another one like that is Awake. And this is like a woozy kind of head trip, day rumination kind of get here. Just a relative workaday trailblaze that I had to say for like early 2010s makeshift. I would definitely feel like very catchy. It's a nice one. Really like the hook on this particular song. It's very blitzing type one, just like White Wall, Same Love, some of those type ones I'd have to say. Just real bleary kind of appeal about this particular one. Good stuff there. This really has like, yeah, this is definitely a trailblaze type one. It's kind of one that feels like something Mac Miller or Big Sean would kind of do within those relative type pitches. It's kind of day slag just within, like the just got done with class or work type fare just within the pitch of just like maybe getting like some talk about some of that type fare, but just kind of feeling a relative breeze about it just within the pitch. Just some good stuff. Standard makeshift, relative peppy makeshift, but just within the tone. This one's not as much of like a lengthy day as far as that particularly goes as some of these other type ones, but I do look after just some good type appeal, the standard slag. I would say Castle is a pretty nice one. This is another glissy type one I'd have to say within the tone. This is a little bit more of a turn up type one. It's like a night venue gliss I'd have to say here, just a starry and kind of fizzy dance club pop rap to kind of get within that tone. Just some good commercial gloss I'd have to say. Almost like a halfway kind of EDM type song. Now this one has a little bit more of like a fizzy type feel about it just within the tone. Not quite as, this is just a little bit more of a frivolous type one compared to a lot of the stuff off this particular album, but it just has some good relative type bounce about it. This is kind of a trendy type one, but it's just a little bit, it feels a little bit static compared to some of the other hits off this project. Like I feel like Thrift Shop, Can't Hold Us, and Jimmy Iovine just nailed this vibe a little bit better, but it is a nice one. It works as like the album cut, but this is probably like, this might be a little bit more secondary compared to some of the more night outing type blitzers, but it has the appeal, but it's just not, it's a little bit more fizzy than some of these other night bouncers on here, but it is good, so I just would say. But then Gold is a nice one. This is a real nice bop on here. It's like a glissy kind of in motion social pizzazz commute to kind of get here. It's like some good commute and breeze, followed by like some stop by the house spruce up typeness kind of get, and then it's also some Benny Blitz later to kind of have. So it just kind of goes through the motions. There's like an Eazy-E song, I forget which one it is, one of his singles off of like his 1988 album Easy Does, as far as those pitch kind of happen, where it just kind of goes through the motions just through like driving, getting home, stepping out, some of those type fares as far as those pitches kind of happen, smoking up a bit, just some of that type fare just to be able to get, just going through, just kind of standard day activity, just kind of going through the tracks as far as those pitches kind of happen, just an overall dope song kind of get. Really like the pizzazz of this particular song. Another song that kind of does that is 10,000 Hours, just kind of more in like the gloss of like a white collar type fare, just like a graceful kind of night. Both those songs do that pretty well just within the tone, but it's just some excellent type fares to kind of remember that particular thing that just doesn't happen as oftenly in rap music, or at least nowadays times, I'd have to say. But it's a good blitz type appeal to kind of get. So yeah, this album gets a 10 out of 10, I would have to say. The social score is going to get a 10 out of 10 also. Just all these hammering type aspects. The only reason why I wouldn't would just be the tone as far as saying that just like, I think all the singles hit definitely, just the message of all these, the aspect and the importance and just the overall relay as to how they were delivered, just the impact that they particularly had. This is definitely an album that does probably deserve Grammy Rap Album of the Year. I mean, I can see like the disappointment behind the Kendrick album not getting it, but I do think the aspect behind this particular album just accomplished quite a bit with like the singles. Just, I mean, it was a tight race. I would definitely say just between that, Kendrick had a lot of singles off of Good Kid, Mad City, but this one did as well. I feel like within the concepts, just within the pitch, that these were like two albums that were just very vicious, like Coke and Pepsi, as far as those pitches kind of went, as far as just the vicious type of appeal, because this album does have the hits. It is is very much a classic type album, and a very one that did a lot of damage in terms of the impact as far as saying just what it accomplished. I just don't know as commonly as to whether or not it gets the accolades. I think Macklemore tends to get more flack, kind of being seen as like a culture, kind of being seen as more of like a culture vulture, some of those type pitches just within the tone. But I look after this did a lot of damage, just like Eminem's Recovery, some of those type ones. Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City did the same thing as well. That's very trailblazing type one, was just within the pitch. So I look after it. Classic stuff here. Has some good nightclub songs. Doesn't have a super ton of them, but has enough to be able to have some good times. Jimmy Iovine, Thrift Shop, Can't Hold Us, just some excellent type ones. Does have some graceful night outings. Has some songs with messages. Has plenty of good makeshift slag on here and evening slag. Has some good hippie like kind of Mac Miller and Big Sean like day slag, some pitches like that. So plenty of good tones. Plenty of that good stuff. Great guests on here. Absol, good Schoolboy Q. A lot of great hook artists on here. Too many to list as far as this pitch can happen. Just to go through a lot of these. Plenty of great hooks, just all bound in this album, and pretty excellently produced as well. I'd have to say this real. I mean, it's just a little bit more rugged, a little bit more in between. I'd say this Ryan Lewis cat's a different type of producer as far as those pitches can happen. Just gives some off the wall type productions, but they hit pretty heavily. It's just kind of a different taste of getting a producer that just was original for the time and managed to accomplish like a classic album out of the early 2010s. So some good fares. So in terms of the future, not really as full-blown sure what Macklemore's been up to. I know at least he dropped like an album possibly in 2022 or 2023. He does not commonly as much team up with Ryan Lewis anymore. I know they at least did an album in 2016 as far as those pitches can happen, but in terms of like impactful like this particular one, it seems like this is probably the height of like their combination as far as those pitches can go. But maybe there might be some other hit Macklemore albums. I've heard him on the radio with the number of hits across the years apart from this particular album. I know he did like a song with like Kesha and Skylar Grey, some of those type folks, just within those fares that I'd suppose probably some other hits that he's had, but just some excellent type fare, and this is like an early 2010s classic.